Okay, so what we had done is we had finished quote, buy, sell, and sell is remaining. We finished quote, buy, and index. Now how do we do sell? Well, sell will be pretty much similar to buy. The only difference is going to be that we are going to buy negative shares to sell something, right? So to do that, what we're going to do is let's go to application.py, right? So let's go into application.py, and inside of this we're going to find buy. We've done buy, okay, and this is going to be exact. A lot of this is going to be similar to buy. A lot of sell is going to be similar to buy. So I'm just going to take all this, and you can copy this entire thing. So since there's a lot of copy pasting, you can think of a solution where you would decompose these functions into more functions and probably get a better design than what I'm providing here. But this is a very basic kind of initial approach that you can start off with, and then you can improve on this, right? So let me know in the comments about if you can figure out better ways of doing this. Okay, so for now I'm just going to give you a basic version. If you're finding missing errors, you return missing errors. Otherwise, what you do is you can return this. So let me create the form. The form is also going to be similar to buy, right? So what we're going to do here, well, there's a little bit of difference, but which I'm going to do. But well, let's just finish this off first. So what's going to happen is there's a symbol that's going to be there. It's similar to buy, and oops, let's fill this up. If you're looking into buy, there are these two things. There's one name field and one shares. So the same way we would have in sell, the symbol that the user provides, and shares, and the number of shares, right? The user wants to sell. So everything's going to be the same almost. There's one difference is at this point when we are looking at the cache from this, we don't need to do this because we don't need to check. We're not checking if the user can't afford something, because the user can always afford to sell whatever this user has. And the thing that we need to check now is whether the user enters some, the number of shares over here in this field. But the number of shares that he entered by the user, if that's more than the number of shares that the user already has with him or her, right? So what we're going to do is we're going to execute one more thing. Okay, so instead of this cache, we do need the cache to update the cache. So but before sort of updating it, we need to check something, right? So what we're going to do here is so first of all, we're just going to add this thing, the number of shares times the number of stocks, the number of shares times the price per share, right, which is here, which we get from stock, which is which we get from lookup. Okay, so now after now what we're going to do is we are going to execute something. So we can execute a SQL query, which is going to be very similar to what we've already executed all this while. What we need here is we need to select something, okay, from transactions. What do we need to select? We need to select the total number of shares that the user has, right? You can say sum of shares as total shares, okay, and then we can say from transactions we need the sum of all the shares for this particular symbol. So the symbol that has been entered by the user, but by the way, the symbol that is entered by the user could be an invalid symbol, or could be a symbol that the user does not have, right? So there are two cases which is possible, but we can handle this one case in the front end only. We can actually provide a drop down over here instead of writing anything. You don't give the user the choice only. So what's going to happen over here is, let me go here, and like in the post so this is the post section, right? This entire thing is inside the post section. I'm just going to reduce this size so that we can see a lot of the screen. Okay, I'm going to go full screen. So here, if you see, we have the cell thing, which is cell function, in which we have post, and then there's this thing called else, which is the get part, right? In the get part, we're gonna render this template cell.html, and in the cell.html, instead of like in buyer.html, we have nothing. We have no, like, we can enter anything. We would like to add some restrictions here. The restriction that we're going to add is we're going to provide this template page, the buy template page, with certain symbols. What are the symbols that we can provide? We're going to provide we're going to provide the things that the user already has, the symbols that the user already has. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say db.execute, and we're going to execute the same thing that we did inside index. Almost the same thing. We're going to essentially do the same thing. We're going to say select symbol, comma, sum of shares as total shares. Well, we don't need to do even this, because we are essentially, we only need the symbols from transactions, where the user ID is going to be equal to the current user ID, which we're going to fill in after we finish the string, and then we're going to group by. Then we're going to group by symbol, and then we say having. What do we want? We also want to find the total shares. So we're going to say sum of shares should be greater than 0, right? So after having done this, we can be, we can be assured that we're getting all the symbols. Okay, we're grouping by symbols, and we're saying if the sum of the shares that we have is greater than 0. And then what we're going to do here is we're going to also provide the current user ID. So user ID, this field over here needs to be populated by the current user ID, right? So where do we get the current user ID? Inside the session, right? Inside the session variable. So after having done this, we can return, cell.html, and then over here we can provide this information. Let's say these are a bunch of rows, right? We get back, right? Well, over here, if you think about it, I'm going to provide symbol. Inside of this, what's going to happen is there's this notion here where this returns a bunch of rows, which is a bunch of dictionaries. So inside of this, we have symbol, okay, and something like apple or anything, right? So every single sort of entry in this rows table is gonna have a symbol field inside of this. So why do we want to complicate this? I'm just gonna simplify. Whenever we want to send something to the view, so to speak, to the template, we want to simplify this as much as possible. So what we're going to do here is we're going to say, you know what, I'm gonna take this for every row in rows. What I'm going to do is I just want this symbol. So row of symbol. I'm going to create a list out of this. So this is using the list comprehension construct in Python. So okay, so let me just do this symbol, okay, and then I can just encapsulate or wrap this around a list. So this is providing me, instead of all this, I'm just gonna simply get Apple APL list of all the symbols. So if I have Apple, if I have Microsoft, if I have Facebook, I would get those inside a list from the database for the current user ID, right? For the current user ID, and then we're going to return the render template, and render this template cell.html. So let's see what we're gonna change inside cell.html. It's pretty similar to buy, but there's a little bit of difference. So I'm gonna create a new file, call this cell.html, and then inside of this we're gonna have something. What do we need here? We can provide the same thing we had in buy. However, we're going to change this to cell, and then instead of this over here, we're going to change this to cell, And this method is going to be post. This is going to be form group, where instead of this symbol, and there's going to be symbol and number of shares, right? The minimum is going to be 1. That's all right. But the problem here is, okay, we can change this to cell. The problem here is that this is not going to be a text field anymore. So if you see, this is type text. We want to change this to a drop down. So how do we get drop down in HTML? Is we use the select construct. You select class equals form control. This is just for design purposes, the graphic design purpose. Then we can say name is symbol. Okay. So now this is going to give us a drop down. Okay. What are the options in this drop down? The options inside this drop down is going to be option. Okay, I don't know why this is not working. Let me enter this manually. Option. Okay. And then what we're going to do is, one option is going to be, by default, it's going to be symbol. So we're going to say, like literally the word symbol. So literally the word symbol is going to be the option. What we're going to disable is you can't send this to the user, to the backend. And we're going to select this. I mean, we're going to keep this selected. And then we can say value is nothing. So this is a default symbol that you get. For example, let me show you. If I go to cell, there's internal server error because I don't think we have completed that part, but we can complete it. Let me go back to application.py. It says which part? Well, let's see. It says render template row in rows for row in rows. Okay. Fair enough. The problem here was this thing which you solved. Let me just go back here. Let me go back to cell R and 1. And then we have Facebook, Microsoft, and Tesla, for example. So if we want to sell, you go to cell and we should, so this is the thing that I wanted, just this default symbol that's selected here in this drop down, which looks like this text field, but instead of text field, this is a symbol. So how do we populate this with the options? Well, to populate this with options from our backend, we've already provided to this template, we've already provided a variable called symbol, right? Symbols, I'm sorry. So this variable called symbols that we provide, which is essentially the list of all the symbols, right? So we're going to go here and we can use the templating language. In this case, it's called Jinja. The templating language is called Jinja, where we can essentially get run a for loop. So I'm going to say for symbol in symbols. Okay. We're going to say, we can end this. And for, so we have an option. This is a generic option that we're going to create here, which was going to be the value of which the value is sent to the backend, right? So symbol, so this variable is going to be evaluated here. So whatever the symbol is, you're going to get that, right? So if it's Apple, so the list, if it contains Apple, Microsoft, Facebook, Amazon, for example, then we're gonna get in this variable, we're gonna get Apple in the first iterations, Microsoft in second, and Facebook in the third, and Amazon in the fourth, and so on. Right? Get the idea here. So if we just enclose this inside double quotes, because all the values inside of this should be in double quotes. That's a proper HTML style, right? So we're gonna enter. You can have a symbol here. So what is this and what is this? Well, this is going to be what is displayed over here, right? Displayed in here. And this is going to be what is sent to the backend. And in this case, we want them to be the same. So the symbol, let's say Apple, AAPL, is going to be displayed here, and AAPL is also going to be, sent to the backend. So this is a design decision we've made. We could also have set some name, symbol followed by the name. We could also have sent that. But let me, so you would have to, send both of those things over here, wrapped around. We would send the symbol, you would send the name in that case. But I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to send a symbol right now. You can change this thing in your particular code. But that's pretty much it, I think, for the front end of Cell. Let me just see if this works or not. So first of all, let's see. We have Facebook, Microsoft, and Tesla. if we go to cell, yes, we get these three options, right? So in this case, what happens is reduce a little bit of error checking on the back end, but you should actually check redundantly. You should check for whether these shares that has been entered here, just because you want to be extra sure. But I'm just not going to do that. I'm just simply going to skip that checking part of whether the share that has been entered here, if it's something invalid, because this is too much for this video. You could just check it. And why would you check it? Well, because any post method, right? Any post method, you could send it through this sort of website. You could also change, you could also use inspect element and change a bunch of stuff here. So you could essentially, change this text field. You could add whatever, and then you could sort of submit. So instead of this, I'll show you something. Let's say I change this in the inspect element. If I go here and if I change this to, let's say, the value or something like MSFT2, okay. So you could send them. If you submit this in the back end, you're sending. In the back end, you're sending MSFT2, for instance. It says here must provide shares. Okay. So if I go here, let me just show you something. If I console log, I don't provide the number of shares, but let's say if I console log, I'm sorry, not console log. I'm just going to print out request dot get form dot get, let's say, symbol. Okay, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to just refresh this. Let's see what happens if I send an invalid share. Do I get that invalid share in my backend? Go to cell. Instead of Tesla, let me just go here and send the value of Tesla Model X. Okay, let me just say cell. Let's see what gets sent here, because we've printed the value, and as you can see here, we've sent Tesla Model X. So what we want to do here is you also want to actually add that error checking in, whether you've sent the correct share or not. It's really important, by the way, but I'm going to skip that, because who's going to do this? There's going to be an adversarial user who's going to do this, and so you should handle that situation yourself. But just to keep this very short, I'm going to skip the error checking part, right? You try and do it yourself. So coming back to application.py and trying to finish this off. So what we do here is we are essentially first, where were we? We were selecting sum of shares as total shares, because we wanted the total sum of we wanted this share, and actually we also want the share, so name of the symbol, so to speak. Why? Because we're going to check if you just simply do sum of shares, we would just sum over all the shares that we have. But we don't want that. We want the symbol to be with us as well, so that we can compare this particular symbol that has been entered via the form. We can compare the symbol with the symbol that we've queried from the database. This is going to make a little more sense if I complete this. Just give me 2 lines here. So this is the first thing that I do. This is the same thing that I do sort of a lot of times. I'm doing this same kind of query where I'm just from the transactions table, I am asking for the symbol and the sum of all the shares of the particular symbol. I'm grouping by symbol, and I need this having total shares to be greater than 0, because I don't want the shares to be the thing that you've already sort of sold entirely. We don't want that. You don't want that as part of a result. So in the SQL query itself, we can eliminate the invalid shares. That's a good idea to sort of eliminate do a lot of operations in the SQL query itself instead of in the controller, right? Because that's going to be faster than doing it in the controller. Now what we're doing is, for every row in rows, we get a bunch of these rows. This is a symbol followed by the number of shares of that symbol. So what we're going to do is we're going to check if the symbol equals symbol, then if the shares is going to be greater than row. So what is going to happen is they're equal. So we figured out the symbol that has been entered by the user and the particular number of if it matches the symbol that has been sort of retrieved from the database, then you're gonna ask if the shares of that particular row, so let me say shares of the particular row, this has to be less than or equal to, right? This has to be actually the shares that you've entered from the form, right? This is the share that you've entered from the form, right? That has to be, if it's it has to be less than or equal to the thing that you get back from the database. But over here, if it's greater than that, right, you're asking for a lot of shares, but you don't have that many shares in the database. You're asking for more number of shares than the total shares that you have in the database. Then what you're going to do is you are going to return an apology. What is the apology? The apology is too many shares. And actually, you can also check if whatever you've entered in this shares, the thing that you got back, okay, from here, if that's actually a valid thing. Okay. So let's go here. I'm just going to. Okay, this is one more thing where we select the cache from the database, and then what you do is you just add that instead of subtracting. Now we don't need this. You can always afford to sell the number of shares that you have actually. Now what you do is you can update the user set the cache to be the updated cache, which is going to be the same thing, right? The update cache is just plus. You just plussed it instead of subtracting things. So now after this, you're going to insert it into transactions. The transactions, what you do is into transactions, what you can do is instead of shares, it's going to send negative of that. So -1 times shares. This represents, you know, sending, sort of buying a negative share is the same as selling something, right? And then instead of bought, you can say sold. So that's this part. If you want to test this out, you can test it out and see this works or not. Let's say R1. The thing that we're going to sell is, let's say we sell all the Facebook shares because Facebook is not a good company anymore. Okay, so you can sell this. It says 500 server. Why does it say that? It's because I made a mistake here. Let's see what mistake we made. Oopsie, where did it go? Find, view, console. It says session ID and sell. User ID is a session user ID. What's the problem? 235, 235, 235, 235. It says a user ID. What does it say? It says operand. None. Okay, why did we do this? It's a typo. It's just equals. So I'm gonna go to sell. Let's re-log in. Let's log in again. And let's go back to sell. And then over here you have Facebook. Let's just sell the shares of Facebook because it's not good anymore to keep Facebook stock. So now let's see if you've added that back and you got back to $10,000. Let me sell a bunch of Tesla stock as well. Not the entire thing, but just one share, let's say. And you've seen that the share is reduced. Okay, pretty much we've not incremented anything, which is okay. And this is still to do. So let me just finish this off. The error checking that it needs to be done for a normal user, if they are not so tech savvy and sort of going to inspect element and changing that, is if we sell 6 shares of Microsoft, so the number of shares that has been entered over here is more than what the user has. So it says, it gives us an apology saying that there are too many shares. But if you go back here and if you can sell, let's say 5 shares or 4 shares of Microsoft, then what happens is you get left with 1 share. Okay, this is the cash you have. These are the values, current values. This is just $10,000 that you have in net worth, so to speak. So, okay, that this thing seems to work. Apart from a bunch of more error checking that you can add here, this is sort of done for me. Now let's go and move on to one more feature, this history feature. So let's go to history. History is going to be pretty simple, right? What is history going to be? History is simply going to be whatever you have in this transactions table. Just display all of that. Okay. So, okay. Let's see. So what are we going to do? Here is we're going to say, we're going to start off with the query. What we're going to do is we can select, we're going to just select what? You're going to select a bunch of things from the finance.db database, right? What are we going to select? Let's think about it. From this thing, we can select everything, but do we even need everything? Let's see what we need. Transactions, the only thing I think we need is the symbol, number of shares, the price, and the transacted thing, which is the transaction date. So let's select all these things. Okay. You can also use select star, but you know, just take only as much as we want. That's the motto here. Don't take more than required. It's price, and then say transacted from transactions. And then it's very important to say where user ID equals user ID. The thing is, you can oftentimes what's going to happen is if you don't mention this, you're going to get back everything, which is not good. So let me just check. If I create another user, this is okay. Login user ID. What happened here? Invalid syntax. Okay, let's go back here and see if it works or not. Okay, R1, and then let's see if this is the number of shares. This is the share portfolio. Let me just register one more. Let's say R2 1 If it says internal server, why? Because it doesn't return a valid response. The view didn't return a valid response. It's line 20. For view function did not return a valid response. So registrar, we're missing a return statement. Is that what you've done here? Okay, yeah, need a return statement here. Let's just okay, go back here and go to register. Set register. If you see R2 1 and 1, this is apology. Why do I say an apology? Because is R2 already there? Good, username already exists. So if I can log in, where R2 1. Okay, let's buy something. So we are not getting confused with the other user. So the other user has, I'll buy 10 shares of Microsoft, maybe some shares of Apple, and then we're not confusing these two things. I think 2 shares of Apple. Do we even have that much amount? Okay, cool. Apple and Microsoft, 2 rivals. Very good. So now this seems to be working, but let's go back to history. Thing that was bothering us in history is yeah, I got it. See, whenever we've entered something, we must have said user ID equals 1. Why are we saying user ID equals 1? User ID equals user ID. Okay. So wherever you're using this sort of a construct, just need to make sure that we're using user ID equals user ID, because then we don't want to expose. That's ready to, like, really bad if we expose everything to every user. So the user ID is essential in all these SQL queries. Okay, I think we have not missed, we have done this properly. At every stage we have used user ID equals user ID, right, from the beginning. This doesn't seem to be a problem, so we're gonna go and finish this off. History. Select symbol shares price transacted from transactions where user ID equals user ID, right? So now we're gonna fill this part up with the current user ID that is particularly logged in. So okay, fair enough. So I'm going to say, what I'm going to do is I'm going to db.execute this, db.execute this, comma, let's say user ID equals user ID, right? Session's user ID. User ID equals session. From the session, we can just pick user ID, and we can get them over here. These are all transactions. So transactions equals something like this. Inside every transaction, we get symbol, shares, price, and transacted, right? Date of transaction, right? So now what we do is we can say, now there was one problem here. When we get the price, we're gonna get the price in this format. We want the price in the USD format, right? It looks better if we get the price in the USD format. So if we say for I in range len transactions, I'm just gonna change that part. So I'm gonna say transactions of I price is gonna be equal to USD of transactions of I price. Okay, then you're gonna return render template history.html, comma, what, transactions equals transactions, right? This is our sort of the thing that goes to the view, the variable that goes to the view, and this is what is over here, transactions, this part. Okay, let's save this and let's see if this works. It says rd transaction. Okay, now let's go back and create a history, sort of render this template, right? As you can see, we only have the get method here. So whenever in any method, if you have these methods sort of parameter or argument defined, then you get both. You can have both of these things, get and post. But in this history table, it's simply a get request that's going to be allowed here. So no post requests are allowed. So if we go here to history, let's go back. Okay, why does it say that? Okay, invalid syntax because it's not properly updated. Okay, so I'm gonna go back here, open this up, and let's see what happens. R1. Let's go to history and internal server error. Why? Because it's not found. Let's just add this history.html. So we're gonna go here to history.html, and it's gonna be pretty similar to all the templates that we've already created. This seems that, you know, it's maybe a little bit different, but it's only almost similar to this guy, to holdings. I'm just gonna say all the index page, right? So I'm gonna go here to history, and then I'm gonna paste this over here, and then over here we're gonna have history over here instead of the title is gonna be history. This table is gonna be the same thing. The only difference is that instead in the head we have symbol, shares, price, and transacted. Okay, transacted, and yeah, this stuff is the head. Why don't we have a TR here? I think we should have a TR here. Table row is T head. Let's take a T head here once. Do we need a TR? Oh yes, you should have a TR here. Let's see, because you know, yeah, TR, T head should have a TR. I don't know why do we have TR there. It's a row, right? Head instead of a head, you should have a row. I'm just gonna remove these two things. TR, come on, man, TR. Okay, let's put all these things here, and then put it here. You should have had TR in that index also. So let's add tr, okay, and all these things inside tr. Okay, let's get back here. Let's go to this part. Okay, this makes sense. Symbol la. Now we're gonna do the same with this part, but over here, instead of holding, let's have transaction, and this should be changed to transactions, and we're gonna have the symbol. What's gonna happen here is we don't need this footer. Why do we need the footer? We don't need the footer here. We don't need the header now, and we need the body. So at the body, there's this tr, which is going to be for all the history things and everything in history. All the transactions that we've had so far are going to be here. So let me end this also. Let me end this over here. End for. Okay. And then you have this transaction instead of transactions. Okay, let's save this. And symbol, shares, price and transaction, right? Let me just go back here. Let's see if you're in the history chart. Yes, we have all the history, everything that we've done so far. Okay, pretty simple. There's one more feature that you have to add, and there are a bunch of features that you can add. Let me just add one simple one for you, and you can add the rest yourself, I presume. The feature that you want to add, that I want to add, it's a very simple one. It's the simplest possible feature that you could add is just adding some cache. So how would we add some cache? I'm going to define a function here, which is going to be in application of py, right? I want to define a function just akin to this. Let me just similar, and I'm just going to push it over the top of this program. I'm just going to add cache, and I'm going to say login is going to be required, and I'm going to add cache. What's going to happen in add cache is going to simply render the thing if the request.method is going to be equal to post or get, let's say. Then I'm going to render template. What template do we want to render? Let's say add underscore cache.html. You're going to create that template right now. Let's create the template. Okay, so let me just go new file here, add underscore cache.html. Rename this to .html. So what is going to happen here? Pretty similar to whatever we've done with history, let's say, or anything, is we need this part, and we're going to change this to add cache, and then in the block main you have a simple thing with it. Let me just end this block right over here, and what we're going to do here is we can add a form. Form action is going to be slash add cache. Method is going to be post, right? So you got to mention this, otherwise the default method submission, sort of the method in which the form submit, is get. So then what are we going to have here? Same thing as what we had in cell, where you would sell the number of shares. So this entire thing, number of shares. Okay, this is what was the amount that you want to add. I'm just going to call it cache. Okay, and then the type is going to be number. Okay, you can have an integer number of cache that you can add, and minimum is going to be 1, and the thing that you're going to show here is going to be amount to it's going to be amount to add, let's say. Okay, or do you want me to just simply say add cache amount? Let's do this. Anyway, this doesn't matter. Then we have a button here. We have the same button we have here, same styling. The only thing that's changing here is that instead of cell, we're going to say add cache. Okay, let's just see how this form looks like, this template looks like. If we want one more thing to change, right? We want this in the layout file. Here's the advantage of modularity, right? If you want to add just something, you will just add it one time and you don't repeat yourself. So I'm just gonna add a field here after history. After history, we're gonna have add cache over here. Add cache as one more link, and this will be referring to add cache, right? The app that we are using. It's going to say /add cache. It's going to link to that. So let me just refresh this. It says internal server error. Why? Because we have two of these things which has sort of the same route, which is not possible. So I'm going to say okay, add line number 45 request dot method equals get. It says add line 47 unexpected indentation, something like that. I don't know why it's there unexpected indentation. Say Control C, Flask, run this. The indentation is gone. Magic. Okay, I'm gonna say R1. Okay, let me just go to add cache, server error. Reason being the video original response. It's a render template. It's going to be returning a render template every single time I make this mistake. Returning render template, add cache, and just fix that typo over there. It's going to be add cache. Let's go back here. Let's see if this works or not. Let's see, add cache, right? Cache amount. Let's see amount to be added. Let's do that. It makes more sense. Anyways, that doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what you call this. Amount to add. Okay. Go back here and see if this works. Yes, sure. So I'm gonna add some amount. Let's say $1,000 or $10,000. So once you do this, you gotta go back and sort of modify the post portion of this part. So the request method is get. Then you do this. Otherwise, what do you do? I'm going to stick to the standard thing that we've always done up till now, and I'm going to say if post, then we do something. Otherwise, we just render this template. Okay, inside of this, what do we have? We have a field that we get, which is the cache field, and the only thing we need to check for if it's negative or not, right? But if you try to give a negative answer or a negative response, you can't do that, because sort of the minimum thing that you can have is 1. Can't go below this, because we have added the feature in the front end where the minimum thing is going to be, you can see you have here where the minimum is 1. But what if we say minimum and change this to -100? Now what's going to happen is you can always go back and then you can submit the form, but then you should add the error checking in the backend as well. But I'm not going to do that because we've already sort of done this in the front end, and it's not that difficult to change or to modify this code to include the error checking. But I'm just going to keep this video short now. It's already very, very long. So what is going to happen here is, once you enter the amount that you want to add, you want to update the users table, and you're going to set the cache to be set the cache to be equal to cache plus $amount, so that the amount is going to be, you're going to receive this amount from the user request.form.get from the form that was submitted, right? And there's also going to be a user ID. This is very important. So before I forget, I'm just going to add a user ID here, user_ID. Why? Because if we just write update without saying where, update without where is really, really dangerous, because you can just update everybody in the user base, right? So I'm just gonna say where ID equals user ID, right? Just in the user, the primary key was ID, not user ID. This part is on the users table. Okay, so you update the users table, set the cache equals to cache plus amount. The amount is whatever we get from the form, and we are going to say where the ID is going to be equal to user ID, right? And then what we're going to do is we're going to flash something and redirect. Flash a message added cash. Woohoo! Amazing. And we're going to return and redirect this to this part. Returns and return from the function. Okay, let me just go here and let's check this out. Let me just go R1, and we have 10,000 bucks right now. Let me add 5k. Let me add 5k. Okay, we have 15,000 bucks right now. But let me just check if this has been reflected or not at the other user, because it should not, right? Because if our wants that amount, this is same as 10,000, right? This is the same as what is the default value initially. Go ahead and add some amount here. Let's say 3k, and then once you do that, let's add 100k, and you can play around more. 100k. So now I don't know the stock to buy. Let's say let's buy expensive stocks. Let's buy Teslas. Let's buy 10 shares of Teslas. Why 10? Let's buy 100 shares of Tesla. Can we buy 100 shares of Tesla? No, we can't, because that's the apology thing is going to be Tesla. Let's buy 10 at least. And if we go back here, yes, we bought 10 shares of Tesla. Each share is going to be $2,000, $22,000. Well, that's a lot. Okay, so this is, I think this is a good point to stop this video. If there's any problem that you find here, sort of feel free to comment down below. So like, share, and subscribe. Consider this done. And if there are some improvements, I'll add it to this pset. There's no check 50 here. Just check a lot, add more error checking. Okay, that's really important. So see you in the next one. Peace.